Welcome to part 9 of Vegas Pro Essentials. One regular term you hear people talking about while editing is transitions. This is the process of connecting events together to tell your story. The most common transition is cutting between shots, and you've already been doing that. But there are other transitions you can do to indicate change of location, time, and mood, and we'll be touching upon a couple of these in this video. Firstly, let's look at the second most common transition, known as the crossfade or dissolve. This is when one shot gradually fades into another. To create a crossfade between two events, use the trim cursor to drag one event over another. The crossfade is created, and the timing tells you how long it will last. You can scrub through the crossfade, as well as play it back to see the result in the video preview. To change the length of a crossfade, grab either side of the crossfade and drag it to adjust the duration. If you want to remove the crossfade, drag the edge until the duration is 0 and it's back to a cut. These crossfades work with both video and audio, and they're super useful for creating smooth transitions between events. If you don't want to disturb your edit when adding a crossfade, right-click on a cut and apply a crossfade through the transition menu. The crossfade is created, and by default, it has a length of 1 second. The duration can be changed after the fact by dragging the edges of the crossfade. But if you always want a specific length when adding a crossfade with the right-click or hotkey, go to Options, Preferences, and under Editing, change the cut to overlap conversion to whatever you want. The next time you add a crossfade, it will be that duration. The right-click menu can also be used to convert the transition back to a cut. In this same right-click menu, you can get creative with the timing of a transition with fade types. The default type is a linear fade, but you could have one event linger for just an extra moment while the incoming event starts to fade in, and so on. So even something as simple as a crossfade can be fine-tuned in Vegas Pro. Before we move on to other types of transitions, I want to bring up the subject of the event looping that we covered in the previous video, especially with regards to crossfades and transitions. So I'll add another event to the end of the timeline, and this event has not been trimmed down. To create the crossfade, I'll trim the new event into the one before. Because there is no more media at the beginning of the incoming event, the media starts looping in the crossfade. It's an interesting effect, but not what we want. There are several ways to fix this issue. Let's start with the easiest one with the tools we have already learned. Remove the crossfade by dragging the edge back to the incoming event. Next, select the incoming event and drag the whole event backward over the previous one. This creates the same result in the timeline, but using the existing media in the event without looping it. The drawback is your incoming event will be slightly shorter, but the crossfade should now work correctly. If you select the Transitions tab, there is a huge library of other transitions if you want something more than a cut or crossfade. These are video specific. Since there are so many to choose from, you can search for them, set a favorite, or look through some predefined categories. To add to this, selecting any transition in the list will show ready-made presets, and by hovering over them, you can preview the transition. For example, let's look at the cross effect. To use this transition, drag and drop it onto a cut. When you scrub or play the cut, you can see the zooming effect. Selecting the transition will highlight it and reveal the length. Similar to crossfades, trim the transition to change the length. Let's say 8 frames. Playing this back, it looks more energetic. All fancy transitions have different properties you can adjust. If the properties are not visible in the docking area, click the Transition Properties button for the chosen transition. As an example, we'll change the type of effect from zoom to blur. Playing the transition again, you can see the image blur instead of zooming. You can spend as much or as little time adding and tweaking your transitions. You can drag and drop transitions on top of each other, and they will update but keep the same timing. And finally, to remove the transitions, use the same methods you saw earlier. Note that some of these transitions come in as video event effects, and you can use the Remove Selected Plugin button to clear it. The last aspect of transitions I'd like to cover is fading in and fading out. This is different to everything you've seen so far, because this time you're only using one event instead of two. To easily demonstrate this, go to the end of your timeline. This is something you'll do constantly. To fade the video out, at the end of the edit, place the cursor at the top right corner of the event. The cursor will change from the trim cursor to the fade cursor. Next, click and drag into the event. A curve will be created, and you can adjust the length of the fade. Let's look at the result. This equally works for audio. In fact, you will often use this to fade graphics and other elements on and off screen. Right-clicking on any of these curves lets you change the curve type. And if you want to remove a fade, drag the curve to the end of the event. Fading in works exactly the same way. I'll go to the beginning of the timeline and fade in the first event. In the next video, you'll learn about formatting and framing your media. This is super important if you're mixing different sized media in the timeline, or converting your images between different aspects such as horizontal or vertical video. See you shortly.